So my name is Ilana. So I'm working right now at New Store. I decided just after the pandemic to change the industry and go into retail because it was like an industry that was really disrupted by the pandemic. And just to summarize myself in 4 pictures, and I was lucky enough to work in really great companies that are game changer in their industry. And I developed really a passion about digital experience and digital transformations. I spent my 12 years in the payments and financial services industry, credit card, direct debits, open banking. And my passion now is like not a problem solver, but a problem finder. Find a problem, try to find the right strategy to solve it, and mainly focus on the customer experience. So I helped a lot of companies, like corporate company, financial services, and insurers in digital transformation, and also finding the right strategy in their payments. I get bored during the lockdown in France, so I also CEO of Mahrouch Traveler with a traveling application. So if you come in Paris in the Apidays, so you could use the app to find the good places. And I spent my time between Paris and the French Alps because I like just sitting in front of the Mont Blanc. But today, I'm going to cover some stranger things, like a TV show. 3 things, 3 chapters of stranger things, PSD2 and open banking. Just to having a high level of what is PSD2 and how open banking, like status of open banking in Europe. And chapter 2, we'll see what happened 3 years after September 2019. And the third one is how banks, because we talk about like fintech, startups, but we forget banks. So how banks could be on the winning side of this wave, open banking, open finance, open data, etc. So let's start with PSD2 and open banking. And I really like the keynote for the open banking excellence when she said, yeah, open banking, each one has a different definition. So what we will see here, which is like a PSD2 in Europe. So when we talk PSD2, there was a PSD1 because Europe said, oh, data belongs to user. And user should be able to provide the data and share the data with the third service provider that he wants, if he wants some added services. So this is PSD1. And after, so there is a PSD2, which is like the principal European regulation for electronic payment services. And the main focus of that is all the good stuff, consumer protection, security in the payments, markets, boost also competition. But the most thing about Europe is 2014, when MasterCard and Visa just cut the service to us. I was like, oh, we need some sovereignty in our services, and we need European champions that hold and bring become European and champion in the payment sector. So that's why the main of the PSD2. So if we go to the definition and open banking related to PSD2, so open banking related to PSD2 is essentially describes how banks allow regulator, financial service provider to access and use the share their data with the business. And of course, there is a consent, which brings a lot of challenges and a lot of frictions. Because when we talk about consent, we talk about SCA. This is like a magic word, which is like strong customer authentication, because you need to manage the consent. And we will see just in a couple of slides that this is like one of the main challenges of the deployments in Europe of the open banking. So in PSD2, there is 2 things. There is 2 providers, because if I am a service provider, it's cool. So no one could I'm a startup, I say, yeah, I will get access to the data. No, it should be some certified providers. So there is 2 kind of providers: the payment initiation service providers and the account information service providers. So those kind of 2 providers that need to be certified, need to be known by the regulator to have access to those kind of service. And if we go with the driven minimal banks approach, is like bank just provide 2 services and open and provide some APIs related to those services, which is one for the payment initiation services and one for the account initiation services. So this is like a really a minimal banks approach, providing some APIs just for those services to the EASP provider and PSP provider. So in Europe and in PSD2, so banks this is mandatory that banks needs to provide what we call a payment account, which is not all the kind of account. It's not like K of UK. What is the definition of payment account? It means that in this account, you can place funds in this account. 2, you can withdraw cash from this account. And 3, the account can execute and receive payment transaction, including credit transfer and including also transaction from a third party, which means that for PSD2 for Europe, the banks and also the third service provider will not have access to all the accounts. And if they need like some data, and this is something that we see in, for example, for the providers that are using open banking to develop like scoring models, so they will not have the holistic view of the customer because they will not have access to all the accounts. And today is performed not by PSD2 APIs, but just for web scraping and all the stuff like this. So that's why a lot of third service providers in Europe are talking and happy to have open finance because they could extend that access data to other accounts. So just a timeline of PSD2. So I didn't put all the stuff here, but you can have like some timeline, can share with you like some detailed timeline on that. But just 2 days, like you can see this, how long it is from the start in 2007 and in September 2019. So I know they celebrate my birthday each September, but it's a good thing, but you can see it right now. So there was like a lot of iterations, and mainly because it's a regulation-driven approach, which is not the case, for example, in the US, because in the US it was like a really industry-driven approach. In Brazil also. In the UK, I found this is the perfect balance between like the regulation and also between like everything related to customer focus. So here, like, it was like just because it was a regulation, it's not black and white, it was like a lot of gray areas where each bank in Europe did like interpretation, how they can manage the ACA, how to manage things, and this is why it takes a lot of iterations, and we still have right now a lot of problems related to this. Oh, lost the slide. This is the PSD2 effect. So, Chapter 2, Stranger Things. So 3 years of PSD2 open banking, so how far have we come? So just when you listen to all the fintechs, all startups, etc., I was working them, so they are really complaining about banks. So if there is Think, which is a known Swedish open banking platform. So they found that 41% of the 450 euro banks didn't provide like a sandbox for their service provider. We have this more in law, the banks that say, yeah, this is like the first request that they are having. We have only 5 to 7% of the European customers that use services where like behind there is open banking, which is not a lot. This is on 2021. Which is good is like there is currently about 1,200 like banks that are already acting as a TPP. So this is according to Open Banking Europe. So there is a mixed feeling, I would say, if it's increasing or not. But what I love here is like the Apili, I would say, this is like something very cool provided by Apili when you see, because Europe. So I always make a joke for my US colleagues. Europe is like, it's not a country. There's a lot of countries. They have specific things. They have specific regulation. Consumers have a specific like behaviors and regulations. And you can see here that this is a lot of challenges because of the regulation. Because the regulation was not detailed and was not specific, was like to say provide accounts, but Nothing about how do you manage the authentication, like do some standard about that. That's why it was like quite challenging. And you can see, for example, there was other challenges other than open, like the open banking API, which is like, for example, the money laundering, for example, in France, because it's like if you are a payment service provider, if you want to do payment initiation, so you will face as a startup or as a company or as a service provider, those kind of things. That's why it was like a little blocking. That's why there was like a couple of challenges in terms of regulation, in terms of how banks deploy and how banks provide those open banking APIs. So, also because banks are like just elephant. So fintech are like just rabbit, they are like just, which is good, like just because they are starting from scratch, they are building things, they are building API, they have fundraising, etc. So very good. But the thing that we forget as a bank are like just elephants. So this is a lot of legacy systems, there's a lot of way of working. And also because they are just providing, we are asking them to provide APIs without business model, just they are providing that. It's like just, if we want to be fair, I think they did like just a really great job about that by providing and making effort on that. So, but just to be positive, there is a lot of innovative use cases related to PSD2 and open banking in Europe. So one of them, there was like the KYC, which is know your customers. For example, open banking is used when you need, for example, to set up a mandate for a direct debit. So you need to validate who is the account owner. So just with open banking, you can do that, and this is a way of using open banking to do a KYC. There is income check, because you have access directly into data, to financial data, and you have directly access and real data to have what is the income check. Risk insight and scoring, and I think this is like the main revolution, because open banking changed really the B2C scoring, like how we score consumers, because before it was like just black and white, and there was like a lot of people in gray, we say zone, where like just for scoring they say no. Because open banking, so it's analyzing when you have access to all the financial data. So you are analyzing the behavior more than the solvability, and this is what was done before. So I just like there was like phenomenal impact of the B2C scoring with open banking. And you have also some good things that break in all the barriers to change bank accounts. Because when you access to open banking, so you will have access to all your spans, all the providers that are associated to the span, and you can directly, for example, a bank or a financial service institution could directly like just switch that, because they are getting all the information, all your recurring spans. And the one that I love is the carbon accounting and management platform. So it's like just having, there is some companies which is mixing technology, open banking and sustainability thing. So they are providing a service where they are using open banking. They are having access to all the financial data from a bank statement of a company, and they associate each line of spend to a carbon footprint, and they can calculate that. And this is, I think this is really amazing, and this is like a great example to see that we could open our mind to explore all the financial data to do other use cases. So, this is for all the use cases related to account information. When I tried to build this slide, I was like thinking how I need to put on the PSP things, because we see a lot of I will say, excitement about like all the PSP payment initiation services. And we see a lot of startups, they want to say, yeah, we will change now, we will replace MasterCard, we will replace Visa, we will be like the new way of payments and account things, etc. And for me, the only picture that summarizes all those ambitions is this one. So this decision failed because it was like really, because during this one, so we discovered a lot of things. Why? Because For the payment initiation services, not like made as as I will say, a payment method. Because if you have some fintech that started saying that could be a good alternative of credit card and we could just revolution the e-com, etc. But I say, okay, well, how do you manage refund, for example? There is no way, because when you do a payment initiation, it's just a request from the account to do a bank transfer to the merchant's account. But you think about refund, there is nothing to do about that. If you think about the ACA, the strong customer authentication, in Europe, so each bank, each country are managing that. So the European Banking Authority recently just tried to push hard on that, but we see that finally, for example, all the Spanish banks changed the way of doing like ECA and pushing for app to have like a great customer experience. So this is a good ambition, but for me there is a lot of way on that. So just to summarize after these 3 years, so I think from my point of view, so the account information services currently are making the majority of the use cases. And the second one is in each country. So the authorities always not agree about the scope. And we see also everything related to ACA, to how to provide like a really, really good customer experience, especially for the payment services. We see that the FCA right now just removed 90 days for requesting the consentment. Today, and this is like an important slide for next chapter, which is banks. So because of discovering a lot of things, so there is who is in the open banking landscape. So we have open banking enablers, so all the platform that provides connectivity to banks, to startups, to implement open banking. We have also like API connectivity for EAS, core banking infrastructure, like we see this morning with HSBC that are providing those kind of things, and user solution and services, like services or companies that just providing like the one that they provide like a carbon footprint calculator, or just switching bank accounts directly, but using open banking and are more focusing on use cases. And also API connectivity for payment initiation. And also, we forgot those one, because when you talk about open banking, you talk about sharing data, and also do some payment initiation, so many. So we have a lot of things here and a lot of area which is fraud and risk about that, because there is a lot of risks of that. Consent management, and this is like important. There are all the companies that focusing on how to make like the consent management, and also some 30 provider check-in repository, because when we talk about payments, we forget that there is some money laundering check, there is a KYC, there is a KYB, know your business, stuff that needs to be done behind that. So, and also, because there is open banking, there is a lot of things about what is open banking after. So what is the next step, like moving from open banking to open finance, and from open finance to open data. And the main difference here is like and especially for Europe, open finance will be great because we will have more access to more data, like non-banking data, all the insurance, tax, etc. And the next behind is open data, and we don't know, maybe open to everything. So something you could get. So just to summarize this, how banks could be on the winning side on that. So this is like just a quick overview about the opportunity of open banking. I'm just sharing those, so the numbers are like just crazy. I don't know how those consultant firms are doing those numbers, but yeah, I have an idea, but yes. Okay, so, but we could agree or not about the numbers, but sure thing is banks have like just a big opportunity to do things and to expand their services. And it's like just to retail after and before the pandemic. There is always winners and losers. And the winners are just the retailers that anticipate things and anticipate some trends. And this is happening right now. So banks, worst case, they would just not lose revenue. Best case, they will just really take opportunity of that. So So this is like just some thoughts about how like the banks could benefit and could be in the winning side. So as I mentioned, this is like the minimal approach, like just, okay, this is legal, I need to be compliant with PSD2, so okay, let's take the AS and PS, you have APIs, okay. Sometimes it's working, sometimes it's not working, because there is no, so in the PSD2, no engagement or no like just something that like obviously oblige banks to have like something related to reliability and the scalability of the solution. So this is like something like just minimum. So what could be like just what could be like the approach to make this elephant go fast and take the way for open banking? So the first one could be fintech API approach. Like banks, instead of just developing everything from scratch, they can rely on fintech because they need to have those kind of services. They need to use open banking services because they can, for example, for companies, for B2B, because we are just focusing for B2C. For B2B, for example, when you have like for corporate banking, so they can just get without changing the banks. For example, I have a customer, he's in a bank B, another bank, so I can use open banking services to access his accounts and analyze those things. And we had the example this morning with HSBC, where they are providing a service for customers that they are not in their bank. So this is the kind of things. And for example, a bank could use, for example, Tink or Plaid, because to have like a good coverage. So fintech hubs, which is like really rely on fintech and save time to develop everything from scratch internally. So this could be step one, to have access to all the things. Step two is the banking as a service approach, and we see like the example of HSBC this morning, which is an interesting one. So if you think about that, so personally, I thought 2020 was the worst year, but no. So we had COVID, we had inflation, and for me it was this year because I love like a rib-eye steak and French fries, and I didn't get my Dijon mustard, so sorry, I have the basic need. But serious talk is like just, we had COVID, we have war, we have inflation, we have a lot of things. And what I'm like just saying is like what was exception before was become like just normal things. And we see that companies, especially small businesses and also mid-market, I would say, companies, are facing a lot of things. And no banks, no insurance anticipate this. And in terms of scoring models, there is nothing on the B2B side, for example. And this is the kind of service that banks have the ability to do that and provide those kind of services to do things. And open banking, open finance will allow them to anticipate this because they provide like a good information about scoring, about things, changing the banks, etc. So they can really provide a good services by as a banking as a service approach. Also, you could think about everything related to investment, because today when you have fundraising, it's like just about assumption. You have a spreadsheet with a business plan. You can see everything as a startup to your VC. But if you think, so banks could provide something also related to some services about investment, because directly they can have access to the startup financial data, and they could really analyze the predictability and all the stuff. And this is the kind of usage that banks need to develop. And also from the insurance side, for example, I have like a company, so you could just analyze their bank statement, and you can see the spend of this company. You could do some profiles, and you could also do some marketplace to compare pricing, because you could see, okay, you are paying, I don't know, 100 per month for this insurance. So you can get all the access to all the other competitors, and you can compare and provide like the best prices. So there's a lot of use cases the bank can provide as white label, as a backend service, and could also collaborate and provide those services to fintech, to startups, and a service provider. The third one is when you rely on fintech hub to provide all the connectivity. When you use open banking also, to create like additional additional value services, so you could create ecosystem. And for me, like the best approach is not like fintech against banks, so they need to be a collaboration. They need to think about business model. And the same thing for the payment initiation services. If fintechs agreed with banks like in a business model and try to do an ecosystem, I think things will move very fast. So this is a kind of thought that I'm sharing with you. This is the end of the Stranger Things. So thank you. And this is like just a high level. So you can scan if you want me to share the presentation, if you have some topic to discuss. So happy to share that.
Thank you very much. Yeah, the future owner of Twitter there. Thank you. Yeah. So we have time for 2 questions, actually. 2 short questions, yeah. Actually, a lot of really good sum up of all what's happening, right? Just to tell you, like.
Please hesitate to ask questions.
So I'm gonna start with the first one, and you know, in this conference, we used the theme of the event in 2016 was open banking beyond regulation. You know, like regulation-driven, forced innovation, but actually say no, we should think beyond that, right? So it seems actually the regulation PSD2 or the open banking UK has driven like some forced innovation, some fintechs and everything, but let's say it seems the ecosystem is already trying to go beyond that, right? Most of the players who are serious about it are going beyond that, right? So, like, would you think that the embedded banking mindset that we have been sharing is wide, or no? Like, the pure AISP or PISP stuff is still the majority of what we call open banking? So
today, yes, but the future is definitely embedded finance and embedded banking, because this is like the best approach than like just doing like, yeah, like banks provide services and others like will just consume those APIs. So I think embedded finance, and this is like the case when you see, for example, companies like Amazon or Facebook. So they are using payments. Payment is just it's embedded. It's just a tool. And this is like something that we should do also for open banking. It has to be a tool, and we need like to focus more on use cases and focus how like the interaction between banks and between fintech needs to be done. So that's the thing.
So I've read also recently preparing the conference that we have a kind of a draft of a PSD3 coming.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think about the current draft? And it is really needed with all that has been done already?
So see you in 10 years. I think
we've done already 10 years of Apidays conferences. Yeah. We can do 10 more, right?
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, so the main things and main challenge was the ACA, the strong customer authentication, because right now is banks hold this part, and there was like a lot of fintech and a lot of startup like Plaid. I think there was like really pushing on that to allow like a third service provider, because they are certified. They will not, no one let's just become like a third party to consume those applications. So I think if for PSD3, so I think the thing that will be done is like to move the ACA and allow like a third service provider to manage that. So I think this is the main reason, and also open finance. I think it will be, if it will be updated, it will be those two, ACA and open finance, to have access to other accounts.
Yeah, so would you say regulation have been pushing in the right direction after all?
Yeah, yeah. But it will take time because it's Europe, so yes. Okay, but yeah, so I think it will be PSD3, but I think Europe needs to change this and to not be like a regulation-driven approach, but more like a industry. And the UK, like it's a great example between that, because it's a good balance between regulation and industry-driven approach.
Do we take one question from the audience? Because I may have a question about like with Open Banking UK, right, who is a lot more specific about standards and design, versus PSD2 was more like pushing for with not being as specified. Would you say that it's better when a regulation is precise, or when they let companies implement the
No, they need to be precise, and this is the problem, because the RTS was like just you could share data, but it's like not, but UK was like really precise. There was like a standardization of the things, how to access, not just you need to do that, but how you need to do that. And this is like, I think, what makes difference between the UK and the Europe.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank
you. That was great. Thank you.